Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to another episode of EdTalk with me, your boy, Pastor Strick. Hope you guys have had a great week since the last time we were together. Hope you were able to be a blessing to someone and hope someone was able to be a blessing to you. Most importantly, I hope you were doing everything we talked about last week and moving out of those comfort zones. So if you moved out of your comfort zone in any way, shape, form, or fashion between last week and today, go ahead and give yourself a big round of applause. Go ahead and pat yourself on the back. I appreciate those of you that are in the house this afternoon. Melissa, Sheila, Chandra, Tracy, I see you guys. Thank you. You know, we ask everybody when they come in the room to just let us know where you are watching from. So let us know if you are stateside. Let us know if you're one of our international partners. I got a message last week from someone in Germany, from someone in Germany saying that they had heard the Ed Talk about the power of belief and how they were changing their mindset. And they were really just thanking me for teaching the word, but thanking whoever it was who shared that message with them. It got put in some group, I was told, and that person heard it. So you never know where this word is going to end up, right? You just never know. So go ahead, and if you don't mind, like the broadcast and then take a moment to share it. Take a moment to share it. You can share it to your page. You can share it to your story. You can make a reel out of it. You can share it on your timeline. You can even share it in groups if you have permission to do so. Courtney, good to see you this afternoon as well. Listen, I'm excited about these Ed Talks. They're just building on top of one another. We started off talking about the power of belief. We then got into how important it is to have discipline and how that is greater than motivation. We then talked about how to overcome self-limiting beliefs and how not to allow the things that are said about us or the things that others say about us or to us to impact us in such a way that we start to believe it more than we believe what God has said about us, right? And then we started talking about how to develop this growth mindset. And it was so good because we just came out of a dynamic conference weekend with Pastor Sean, the Live Your Dream live experience. And it was so interesting to see so many of the things that we've been talking about here on Ed Talk show up in all of the various teachings. You know, Crystal Robertson did a teaching on how to take messy action. And then we had our dynamic speakers in Unica J and Pastor Dr. Dee Freeman. I had a chance to speak, and of course, Pastor Sean just put a bow on top of all of it. But all of it was about how do we get out of our own way? How do we get out of our own way so that we can live our dreams and be everything that God has called us to be, right? And so today, we're going to jump into something that I find near and dear to my heart. Is talking about how to make excellence your habit. How do we make excellence our habit? Because we know that habits are powerful things. Habits are things that when we do them over and over, they become a part of who we are. They become a part of what we are. And so today is going to be a day, and I'm not going to be before you long, but I want to tap into this as I tie it into this idea of moving out of our comfort zones, as I tie it into having a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. I want to tie it in to how do we use excellence so that we overcome self-limiting beliefs? And then how do we use excellence as a form of development so that we believe in ourselves, right? Because we have the discipline and the fortitude to always move forward, because we're not moving forward on our own cognition. We're not moving forward on our own will and ability. We are moving forward because we are moving in the direction that God has told us to move, right? All right. So once again, if you haven't had a chance to share the broadcast, do that. Tag some friends. I know it's noon. I know it's only like the fifth time we've done this. People may forget. They may, forget that Ed Talk is going on. I understand. I get that. So if you can, go ahead and just share it with a couple of people who you typically see on here. Tag some people. They won't mind if they get tagged a couple times. And then we're going to get right into today's teaching, talking about making excellence a habit. So go ahead and just type this in the comments section for me as we get started. Say, excellence is a tool for greatness. Excellence is a tool for greatness. And when I talk about excellence, we're going to define it in a minute, but I don't want you to be afraid. I don't want you to think of the word excellence and the word perfection as one and the same, because it's not. Excellence and perfection are not synonymous, okay? But we're going to talk about, what happens when you strive for perfection, what you end up catching, okay? So once again, Good afternoon or good morning to everybody. If you're on Mountain Time or West Coast time, it's still the morning time for you. Whatever time it is, I just want to take this opportunity to welcome you to today's Ed Talk with Pastor Strick. Today, we're going to be discussing, again, what I believe is a very critical topic that's necessary in order for us to achieve our dreams, right? Pastor Sean talks a lot about living your dream. If you're going to live your dream, I said at her event, you can't be average. You can't be average unless you have average dreams, but you can't have big dreams and operate in mediocrity and expect to receive big things. So I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you. I want to push you to start thinking in those terms that if you have big dreams, you've got to have big actions. You got to have audacious goals. You have to be disciplined. You have to be able to talk to yourself when yourself is talking to you bad, and you got to be able to get yourself in position to not be average. So listen, whether you are an entrepreneur, I know there's a lot of those out there, whether you're a student, right? You're going back to school. Maybe this is your first foray. You headed towards school to get your bachelor's degree. Maybe you went before and it didn't work out and now you're back in school. Whether you're a student or whether you're just simply someone who wants to reach their full potential. And I hope I got some people out there who want to reach their full potential. If you want to reach your full potential, just go ahead and say, I want to reach my full potential, or say, that's me. Let me know that you really want to reach your full potential. If you want to reach your full potential, then developing the habit of excellence is going to be key to achieving all of your goals and for you living the life that you truly desire. When I talk about excellence, I'm not asking you again to be perfect, but what I am asking you to do is to strive to be better every single day. I'm so glad to see so many of you saying that's me. I'm glad to see so many of you saying, yes, that's me. I want to live my best life. I want to reach my full potential. So in today's episode, what we're going to do is we're going to explore for just a moment what it means to make excellence our habit. We're going to talk about why that's important. And then most importantly, we're going to talk about how can you start today? How can you start today developing the habit of excellence in your own life? So what I want you to do is I want you to sit back. I want you to relax. I want you to grab a pen and paper or a tablet or a notepad or your phone, whatever it is that you take notes on. And I want you to just be ready that if something hits you, something that you need to remember, you have a way to write it down. Because, research tells us that we don't retain the majority of what we hear, that we retain a very small portion of it. And so I'm going to try to set this up today, that I give this to you in chunks so that you can just kind of take some quick notes, understand what's happening in your own thought process and in your own life, so that any switches, any changes that you need to make can be easily done. One of the things I talk about all the time is I talk about living a life of fire. A life of fire. What does fire mean? It's just an acronym that Pastor Sean and we've used, and I've taught this a couple of times at our church, and we talk about living a life of fire. It means to function in radical excellence. People nowadays in our political climate love to throw out the word radical. Oh, he's a radical. He's a radical this. He's a radical this. Radical right, radical left. But radical, really, if you look at the word, it just means to be different than the average. It means to be different than the average. And so I want you to commit to living a life that is different than average. I want you to learn to function in radical excellence. So how do we begin this? So I'm going to begin with a couple of questions, and I'm really just going to kind of ask. I'm going to ask this as though we were in a workshop, as though we were here together. And so I'll look at my screen and get some of your feedback as you go. I know there's a little delay, but we'll make it up. It won't be bad. So here's the question. If I'm going to live a life of fire, a life where I function in radical excellence, here's the question I have to ask myself. Have I ever felt frustrated by my inability to consistently perform at my best? Have I ever felt frustrated by my own inability to consistently perform at my best? Do I show up and do I give a half-hearted effort sometimes? Do I show up and give a half-hearted effort most of the time? Rarely do I show up giving everything my best. And if that's true, that doesn't mean we're bad people. It just means we all have room to grow. We all have room to improve, right? Because what if I told you that making excellence a habit is not only possible, but it is essential if you're going to achieve the success that you desire? That's right. Somebody said, how many times? Me too. There are times where I feel really on and I show up and I give it my best. But there are other times that I show up and I don't feel really on. And I have to be honest with myself. And even when someone's patting me on the back saying I did a good job, I know internally I didn't give it my all. And what we want to do is we want to get to a place where even if people are telling us that we did an amazing job, that we don't walk away feeling like we didn't give our best because we've made it a habit to function in radical excellence. There was a football coach, the late, great Vince Lombardi. Those of you who are football players or you follow the Green Bay Packers, you may remember this name. But he said, he made this quote, and it's been around for a long time, and I love it. It says, perfection is not attainable. Now, notice that he said perfection is not something you're ever going to hit, right? He says, but if you will chase perfection, you will catch excellence. He says, if you will go after perfection, which means if you show up every time wanting to do it perfectly, putting forth your absolute best effort to do what you can do, he says, then what will end up happening is that you will end up catching excellence. Somebody type in the comment section, say, I will catch excellence. I will catch excellence. Excellence oftentimes is the distinguishing factor between those who succeed and those who don't. Those who get picked and those who don't. Those who get promoted and those who do not. Those who get the job and those who get the notice saying, thank you for your time. We appreciate your efforts, but we've gone in a different direction. Excellence is the distinguishing factor between those who succeed and those who do not. In fact, you can look at this across the spectrum, right? You can look at this with all types of individuals, those who were excellent in their field. You can probably start to think of some names, whether they were athletes or musicians or politicians, or maybe they were in the arts or with law or business and finance. And I'm just going to throw out some of the names. And when I throw out the names, I just want you to think about what you think about these individuals in terms of them being people who you would say, oh, I can see excellence in their life, at least in this area that got them to their goal. I'm going to start with President Barack Obama. You know, President Barack Obama was our first African-American president elected in the United States of America under our new Constitution, right? Under the one since George Washington served as first president. What about people like Simone Biles, right? 32 Olympic gold medals. You don't think that she had to practice excellence in order to get there? 32 Olympic and world championship medals. Whether you like him or not, LeBron James. LeBron James and Serena Williams are two athletes who, regardless to whether you like them or not, they are recognized as being excellent at their craft. This is not about comparing them to somebody else and saying, well, they're not as good as Michael Jordan, or they're not as good as, you know, another tennis player. No. We're talking about when you look at their life, when you look at what they've accomplished, you can say, wow, I can see excellence in their life. Think about Misty Copeland. Somebody says, who is that? Misty Copeland made history as the first African-American woman to be promoted to be the principal dancer at the American Ballet Theater, right? I mean, she had to be practicing when other people weren't practicing. She had to do things that caused her to go above and beyond. Entertainment, people like Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey, people in business and finance like Madam C.J. Walker. She became really one of the first African-American, first made millionaires in this country at a time when people were trying to stop her every step of the way. Why? Because she practiced excellence. She practiced excellence. And if you would decide to practice excellence, it can be 100 years from now, and people will begin to talk about the things that you did, the things that you were able to accomplish. Why? Not because you were necessarily more gifted than someone else. That may be the case, but it's because you put in the work. You did what was required, and you showed up every time to do it the right way. So today, what I want to do is I want to explore what excellence truly means, how habits are formed, and I want to talk about the practical steps that we can take to make excellence a daily habit. Okay? So let's talk about the definition of excellence. Excellence is simply defined as the quality of being outstanding or extremely good at something. Okay? It is the quality of being outstanding. What do you today have the potential to be outstanding at? Okay? You have to ask yourself, what is it that and don't really think of something that you're already outstanding at. That's great. You can make improvement. But what is something that if you put time and effort and energy toward, you could also be outstanding at it? You could be extremely good at it. It's going to require some time and some effort, but you would be extremely recognized for your ability to do this particular thing. That is what excellence is all about. Understand, when we talk about excellence, we're not just talking about a high level of performance. We are talking about a high level of performance, but not just a high level of performance. We're also talking about embodying certain values. When we talk about being excellent, we're talking about certain values. Those of us that are born again believers, right? There are certain values and certain characteristics and qualities that as born again Christians, born again believers, we should be exuding those values, right? So it's also then about what we talked about earlier in some of our Ed Talks. It's about discipline. It's about consistency. It's about persistence. It's about focus. And it's about a love for continuous improvement. If you're a person and you never want to get better, you never want to have an action item review of something that you've done to say, how can I do this better? If you're the person who never thinks, how can I improve? Then you're really not a person of excellence, no matter how well you did something. Why? Because it's about those values. It's about discipline. It's about consistency and persistence and focus and a love for continuous improvement. Somebody type this in the comment section. Say, I love to grow. I love to grow. I love to grow. In our church, you hear I say it a lot of time, it's time to grow up. We say it to people all the time, to ourselves, you got to grow up. Why? Because if you're not growing, if you're not learning, you're not growing. If you're not growing, you're not becoming. If you're not becoming, you're never going to reach the pinnacle of your dreams. Okay? So when you think about excellence, again, remember that quote from Vince Lombardi. We know that perfection is actually unattainable. No one is perfect but God. But if we chase perfection, we'll end up catching excellence. In fact, there's a quote by Aristotle. And one of the things that Aristotle said is he said, we are what we repeatedly do. I'm sure you've heard this before. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit. Excellence is not something I do one time. It's not something I do the first 3 months of the year. In the other 9 months of the year, I don't do anything of excellence. No, excellence is what we repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence is not an act, but a habit. If I want to be excellent, I have to practice it repeatedly. It's the old adage, they used to say that practice makes perfect, but the truth is perfect practice or practicing excellently makes perfect play, right? If you don't do it the right way when you're practicing, you're not going to show up in the game and do it the right way. So this game we're talking about is the game of life. So if we want to be excellent in life, we got to practice it in the small areas of our life. Okay. So let's talk then, how do I develop habits? Because that's important. If excellence is a habit, how do I develop a habit? Habits are formed through a process called habituation, which involves the creation of neural pathways in the brain. Okay. When we perform specific behaviors repeatedly, what happens is the neurons in our brain begin to connect with one another. They begin to create a pathway that becomes stronger every time we repeat the behavior. Okay? That's the reason you cannot reward children for negative behaviors. Because even if you reward them for negative behavior, here's what I mean. Let's say you have a child that's acting out. Okay? Maybe that child just wants your attention. But the only way that child gets your attention is when they act out and you take them and you put them in timeout and you talk stern to them and all this other kind of stuff, right? If you don't realize that the child is just asking for attention, you will begin to reinforce that negative behavior because you're giving them what they want when they misbehave. The same thing is true in life. If you're doing something and you do it repeatedly, whether you like it or not, the neurons in your brain are creating a pathway. And this process known as habituation begins to take place, and you create a habit, even if that habit is negative. Even if that habit is negative. Let me explain. Over time, what happens is the pathway in your brain becomes stronger and stronger because of the behavior that you do. And what happens is as that neural pathway becomes stronger and stronger, to do that habit becomes easier and easier. And before you know it, the habit that you used to have to think about doing, you now do automatically. It becomes on autopilot for you. It requires very little conscious effort to perform. And I'm not trying to be funny, but I got to give you this example. This is the reason that people will curse someone out and not even realize that they cursed them out. It's the reason that someone will strike someone and hit them really fast and not even realize that they're doing it. Why? Because they've done it so many times before. And because they've done it so many times before, they have a buildup of neural pathways in their brain that is helping them to create this strong pathway so that they are not even they don't even have to be conscious in order to do the thing, this habit that they've practiced. Now, the habit formation process works like this. There's a thing called a cue, C-U-E, okay? Then there's what's called a routine. Okay. And then there's a third thing that is a reward. Every habit you have, no one on here is exempt. Every habit you've ever had or have followed this process. Okay. So first of all, what is the cue? The cue is basically the trigger. Okay. It is the trigger that initiates whatever behavior you are developing. It could be something in the environment. It could be an emotion that you have. It could be a thought. It could be a place. Whatever it is the trigger. It is the thing that is the catalyst for creating this particular habit that you may have. For example, it could be the sound of an alarm clock. That could be your cue to get out of bed every morning. Okay? It could be, it was funny, and I tell this all the time. When we were potty training our boys, I used to run the water in the bathroom. I used to run the water in the bathroom to kind of, I don't know, help them hear the sensation of water. And that's how we taught them to be potty trained, right? What was their cue? Water running, okay? When they heard water, when they were little kids, they understood, okay, now it's, okay for me to, if I'm in the bathroom, I can go to the bathroom. It could be anything, but the cue is the trigger. So the question is, if you have a negative habit, you have to ask yourself, what's my cue? What is the cue that I'm not even maybe aware of because I've done it so long? It's created such a deep neural pathway that I am doing this thing on autopilot. What is my cue? Okay? Because once you have the cue, once the alarm goes off and you're used to hopping out of bed at 5:30 a.m. every morning when that alarm goes off. Okay. In fact, you'll do it so long, your body will begin to recognize when it's 5:30. You won't even need the cue anymore. You won't even need the alarm clock to go off. Your body will start to recognize that it's time to get up. Some of you say, I don't know, no matter what, I get up at 5 o'clock, I get up at 6 o'clock. You've been cueing your body. That neural pathway in your brain is so strong that even without an alarm, even without a clock, your body knows it's time to get up. Okay? Does that make sense? And so the first thing is the cue, okay? And so then after the cue, we have what's known as the routine. Now, why is all this important? Because we're going to use this habit formation process in order to become excellent in the areas where we want to shine, okay? So after the cue comes the routine. What is the routine? The routine is the behavior that is triggered by the cue, okay? And this is the action that we take in response to the cue. For example, getting out of bed in the morning when the alarm clock goes off. The alarm clock is the cue. Me getting out of the bed is the routine. Alarm clock goes off, bring, right? That's my cue to do what? My body knows it's time to get up. So everything in my body that needs to start firing and triggering in order to get up out of that bed, all of the thousands of nerve endings that have to respond to my brain saying it's time to get up, they begin to line up so that I can do the routine, so that I can do the action. So there's a cue, there's a reaction, and then number 3, here is the reward. Here's why we keep doing what we do. The reward is the positive outcome that we receive from performing the behavior, even if the behavior is wrong or negative. You say, whoa, wait, Pastor Edwin, what are you talking about? Okay, hear what I'm saying. 1 is a cue, okay? It's a trigger. Something triggers me. Whatever the trigger is, could be an outside environment, a feeling, whatever it is. Somebody say something to me I don't like. That's my trigger. That's my cue. Okay. What's my routine? My routine is that when someone says something I don't like, I curse at them. Okay. If that's my routine, it's not mine, but if that's your routine, right? If that's something you've practiced and now you do it automatic and you're like, oh, I don't even know why I said that. Okay. That's your routine. You got a reward for doing it. What do you mean I got a reward for doing it? When they said something reckless to you and you cussed them out, you felt better afterward, and that was your reward. And because that was your reward, your brain releases dopamine to let you know that what you just did felt good. And then it serves as a fortifier to that neuron pathway that you just created. So now what you just did is going to be stronger the next time it happens rather than the first time that it happens. And so that's the reason you got Christians who say all the time, I love Jesus, but I cuss a little. What they mean is, I love Jesus, but I have so been working on this habit formation process. It is stronger in my life than Holy Spirit. Ooh, okay. Selah. Because every habit you have, the way you eat, the way you brush your teeth, the way you wash your face, the way you drive your car, everything you do operates off of this habit formation process. There is a trigger, there is a routine, and you reap a reward, even if that thing that you did is negative, right? Why? Because the reward reinforces the behavior and it increases the likelihood that you're going to repeat that exact same behavior in the future. For example, going back to our getting out of bed scenario, right? The reward for getting out of bed in the morning might be a sense of accomplishment. It may be that you get to enjoy your coffee. It may be that you get to go to the job that you love. It may be that you get to make money. Whatever it is, it's going to reinforce that cue and routine process in the cue and routine in the habit formation process. Okay. As we repeat this process over time, the neural pathway becomes stronger and stronger, and the behavior eventually becomes a habit. That's the reason people say if you want something to be a habit, you got to do it 21 times. Why? Because if once you've done it 21 times consistently, right? Then what you're doing is you're building that neural pathway. Some of you right now, you have phone numbers that you haven't called in years and you can still remember your phone number? I can still remember the phone number at my Meemaw's house. And that phone number probably doesn't, I mean, she certainly didn't have the phone anymore. She's going on to be with the Lord. And most people don't have a landline anymore. But I can remember that phone number. Why? Because I did it so much, it burned a neural pathway in my brain. And it went from just being something that I had to think about to being deposited into my long-term memory where it has been stored and filed. That's the reason why when your phone sends you a 6-digit code and you got to put that 6-digit code in to get into a particular app or something, the moment you put that in and you start dealing with the app, you forgot the code. Why? Because it wasn't a queue routine reward process involved with storing that number. So you got to ask yourself, what are some negative habits? What are some negative habits that I have, right? That I seek to get rid of? And some of you have been seeking to get rid of some negative habits, but you didn't even know how you had the habit. You weren't even aware of what the trigger was. You weren't even aware of when that trigger happens, how you automatically responded. And then you weren't even aware that you were actually getting a reward from it, even if you felt bad after you did it. The chemical composition that took place in your brain didn't care whether the outside stimuli said it was bad or good. It released the dopamine because it wanted you to have the likelihood that you would do the exact same thing again. Amen. So by understanding this habit formation process, we can work to create new habits and we can work to exchange existing ones. Okay. Type this in the comment section. Say, I am not bound by previous habits. I am not bound by previous habits. Okay. I'm not bound by previous habits. Habits can be a powerful tool in achieving excellence. By developing good habits and consistently engaging in the right positive behaviors, what we end up doing is building momentum. We start to stay focused on our goals. We start overcoming our obstacles, and we start to create a positive mindset and the right kind of attitude toward this pursuit of excellence. Why? Because remember, we're gonna go after perfection so that we can catch excellence. And so, if you think about what a habit looks like, there are some individuals. There are some individuals who have done things to cause them to be great. And I was searching and I wanted to share some of them with you. And so I'll do that real quick. Some of you know the author Stephen King, right? Stephen King had a daily habit. Now watch this, of writing at least 2,000 words every day. He did it every single day, even on the weekends and even on holidays and even when he was on vacation. He had a discipline so that no matter what he was doing, he spent time writing 2,000 words every day. And that consistency and that fortitude allow him to publish over 50 best-selling books. Why? Because he had a habit. He had a habit. I'm sure there were days he didn't feel like writing, but you know what? His discipline showed up and said, it doesn't matter what it feels like. What is my daily habit? And then over time, he probably got so used to writing 2,000 words a day, he probably started doing it when he didn't even have to think about it. It was just something that he did. I think about the Olympic swimmer, Michael Phelps, right? Michael Phelps, when he was at the peak of his training, said that he got up every morning at 6:30 a.m. and he swam every day, 7 days a week for 6 hours a day. 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he had a very strict diet that he paid attention to. And as a result of that discipline, as a result of that habit, he won over 28 Olympic gold medals, more than anybody in history. Type this in the comment section. Say, habits make a difference. Habits make a difference. The investor, Warren Buffett, had a habit of reading for up to 5 hours a day. It's notoriously known that he has no televisions in his house. that he read up to 5 hours a day. He said that allowed him time to expand his knowledge and to always stay informed about the companies in which he was going to invest and eventually take over, buy, and sell. He said that this habit helped him to become one of the most successful investors of all time. Why? Because he had a habit. What's a habit you could develop today that you could stick to, you could develop discipline around, and you realize that if you did it, it would make you far better at what you're doing than what's happening in your life today? And the last one I share is about Tim Cook. He's the CEO of Apple. Reports say that Tim Cook wakes up every morning at 4 a.m. to get a head start on his workday. He said this habit has helped him to maintain a consistent and productive work schedule, which also allows him to have a productive work-life balance. And it's allowed him to lead the most successful company in the world, he says, without all the stress of his predecessor. Right? And so if you develop a habit for what it is that you want to accomplish, that habit will help propel you forward. So here goes the question then. How do I make habit, or how do I make excellence a habit in my life? Well, here's some things you got to do. Number one, you got to learn to set clear goals. I won't spend a lot of time talking about this because we've talked about this a lot, and we probably will some more eventually. But if you don't set goals, if you're not purposeful, then life just happens to you. And a goal is not a goal until you write it down. Until you write it down, it's a hope and a dream. You have to set clear, articulable goals, okay? You have to make long-term goals. You have to have short-term goals. And then you have to break those long-term goals down into small, manageable steps that go in line with your short-term goal, so that when you reach those short-term goals, you can celebrate them, and they give you the energy and the motivation to continue the discipline of going forward to reach all of those goals. So if you're going to make excellence a habit, you got to get to the place of setting goals. I said at Pastor Sean's Live Your Dream event that it's not unholy to be strategic. God is a strategic God. It is not unholy to be strategic. It's not unholy to plan. It's not unholy to have a project map. It's not unholy to know the direction you're supposed to go in. Every day doesn't have to be I'm just going to wing it kind of day. But you got to learn to set clear goals. What helps you in setting clear goals? Number two, you got to learn to develop a routine. I'm not saying you have to be as routine as I am, but you cannot despise a routine. Why? Because the routine helps you to establish all of the supports necessary for meeting your goal. For example, setting aside specific time each day to work on a project or to practice a skill, right? If you want to be a graphic designer, reading books about graphic design is great, but at some point you got to practice. At some point you got to set some time aside and say, hey, I'm going to practice drawing something. I'm going to practice designing something. I'm going to practice using different lighting effects. You have to get to the place where you can say, I am going to develop a routine of doing X, Y, and Z so that I can move closer to my goal. Okay. So you got to set clear goals. You got to develop a routine, and then you got to learn to focus more on the process, not just the outcome. We live in a microwave society. Everybody wants everything now. You want to live the CEO boss life now. You want to live the executive lifestyle now. You want to be the boss today. But the reality is that there's so much that we learn in the process. There is so much that we learn as we go. So if we're going to make excellence a habit, we have to learn, and we have to focus on the process of developing good habits rather than just the end result. See, developing good habits aids in your discipline. Your discipline is necessary because at some point you won't be motivated toward those goals you set in step number one. But when you are not motivated to reach those goals in step one, but you have a routine that you established in step two, and you focus on that, which is step three, more so than just the outcome, you will keep going down the road toward your goal, no matter what's going on in your life. Okay. So if we're going to make excellence a habit, here's the fourth thing you got to do. You got to practice consistency. You got to practice consistency. You got to practice constantly, right? It has to be something that you do. It can't be a one-time thing. Remember that quote? We said that excellence is not a one-time thing. So you gotta be the kind of person who doesn't mind seeking out feedback, right? If you're a public speaker and you want to get better at public speaking, at the event, Unica J told us, and those of you who weren't there, you missed that, but she said, hey, if you want to be a public speaker, here are the things you need to do. Find somebody who you think is a good public speaker. She said, and then the first time, listen to them, right? She said, the next time you go through and you listen to them, like on a video or something, turn the volume down, right? Look at their hand gestures, look at their movements. She said, then the third time, go back and listen to it, but listen to it for specific language, right? Do they voice go up, goes down? Do they lean in? Do they lean out when they're getting ready to make a point? If you want to get better at something, you have to practice. She was talking about that because she speaks for a living. And so if she speaks for a living and she wants to be excellent at her craft, she has to be able to receive this kind of feedback and then practice that kind of feedback, right? And then lastly, if you want to make excellence a habit, here's the last thing you got to do. You have to continuously improve. You got to seek to get better every single day. Every single day, you have to seek to get better. You have to want to improve. You got to be able to take feedback and learn from your mistakes and continually seek ways to improve on your skills, even if that means having to do it a different way. A lot of people get bought in to doing things a certain way. You watch this with basketball and football coaches. Sometimes they're so committed to their philosophy. They're so committed to running a zone defense, or they're so committed to running a cover two. They're so committed to a particular scheme. And even when that scheme isn't working, they'll just stick with it. Why? Because they don't understand the power of continuously evaluating and improving on something, even if what worked for you last week is not working for you this week. And if you're a business owner out there, you certainly better be able to do this, because times are changing. In fact, by the time we say something is new, it's already old. The new way of marketing is the old way of marketing. Why? Because things are happening and changing so fast. So you have to be willing to be a person who seeks out internally this idea that I want to constantly improve. Okay? Here's the problem. There are obstacles that you have to overcome. If you don't overcome these obstacles, you'll never develop excellence as a habit. What are some of the obstacles? Things like lack of motivation. Remember, we can't go by just motivation. We need discipline, because motivation won't always be there, right? Here's another obstacle: overwhelming goals. Sometimes you set a goal, and because you don't break them down into smaller parts, they overwhelm you. They overwhelm you so much you don't do anything with them. So you got to be careful about your big, hairy, audacious goal. Your BHAG ought to be something that's big and something that moves you toward it. It shouldn't be something that's so scary that it causes you to just sit back and not do anything. So you got to watch out for overwhelming goals. And then you got to watch out for lack of time. Well, what do you mean lack of time? Most people don't realize how much time they waste. They waste so much time that they feel like they don't have any time. But if you were to actually spend 24 hours tracking your day, you would see that there are multiple hours in the day in which you are literally wasting, that you could be doing something else with that time. Okay? So don't waste time. And then the lack of support. A lot of times, one of the obstacles for developing excellence is the lack of support. Why? Because you won't reach out to other people and ask them to hold you accountable. You won't get in the right environment, right? I think environment is powerful. You won't get in the right environment so that the support of the environment could help you overcome those particular obstacles. And then there's negative self-talk. One of the worst things you can have if you're going to develop excellence is to have negative self-talk. Sometimes you're going to mess up. Sometimes you're going to blow it, especially when you're trying to develop these new neural pathways. Okay? Because some of your habits are so ingrained, you don't even know when you're about to do it. You don't recognize that you did it until afterwards. And sometimes somebody has to tell you something. They have to be like, oh, did you know you said this or you did that? You're like, oh, I didn't even realize that. Because that neural pathway from from routine and reward has been so ingrained in your mind that you do it automatically. And why is that important? Because if you're not aware of it, you'll do this last thing, which is falling into old habits. You'll fall back into old habits. Go ahead and make this declaration. Say, I will not fall back into old habits. I will not fall back into old habits. I hope you don't listen to this today. I hope you don't decide that you're going to have a new habit. And then because the new habit feels uncomfortable, because it doesn't come easy, you just revert and go back to your old habits. Don't do that, right? So how do we overcome all of those obstacles that hinder us from making excellence a habit? Here's what you got to do. There are some strategies for overcoming these obstacles. You need to find accountability partners. Now, I'm a firm believer that you ought to be your number one accountability partner, okay? You ought to be your number one accountability partner. But if there are people out there who are willing to partner with you to help hold you accountable, if you will let them. What do I mean by that? You cannot ask someone to be your accountability partner, and then when they hold you accountable, you get offended with them. You ghost them. You get mad at them. You talk crazy to them. If they're there to help you, you have to let them help you. Okay? Again, we talked about breaking down your goals into smaller parts. Why? So you don't get overwhelmed. So that BHAG doesn't make you just sit on the couch and don't do anything. So you got to break those goals down into smaller, manageable tasks. And then you got to reframe what you believe about failure. You got to reframe what you believe about failure, because when you're trying to create a new neural pathway, there's going to be opportunities for failure. But an opportunity for failure doesn't mean that you quit. It means that you have to practice even more, right? You got to get up. You got to do it again. Why? Because it's an opportunity for you to learn and an opportunity for you to grow, okay? Listen, one of the things you have to make the decision that you want to do is that you want to be excellent in every area of your life. Dr. I.V. Hilliard explains it like this. He says, excellence is doing the absolute best you can at your current level. Okay? So maybe I don't have the discipline yet. Maybe I don't have the habit yet of working out every day, but I can develop it. If I think about all of those obstacles that we listed, overwhelming goals, lack of time, lack of support, negative self-talk, falling into old habits. If I can get rid of all of those things, I can make it a practice of making excellent a habit in my life. How? By doing the habit. I have to take action every day so that I can start developing habits that's going to help me achieve the excellence that I desire. Here's what I want you to do as we get ready to end our Ed Talk on today. I want you to choose one habit, just one habit that aligns with your goals and values. And I want you to start small by committing to just 5 to 10 minutes a day of doing something that's going to help develop that habit toward that goal. And over time, I want you to increase the duration of the frequency of that habit until it becomes a natural part of your life. So whatever it is that you want to achieve, whatever you want to grow in, I want you to pick something, right? And I want you to say, I'm going to spend 5 to 10 minutes a day. And then maybe next week you spend 15 to 20 minutes. Maybe the week after that you spend 30 minutes. Then maybe you spend 45 minutes, the week after that an hour a day on something designed to help you reach whatever goal you have for yourself. And I want you to track and see how you get better at that over time. I want you to use the strategies that we discussed, such as setting realistic goals, finding the right supports, getting in the right environment, learning how to stay positive, even in the midst of failure, and how to overcome obstacles and stay on track even when it's not easy. I want you to remember that habits are formed through consistent, repeated action. I want you to stay committed, and I want you to be patient with yourself. I want you to be very patient with yourself, okay? Because making excellent a habit in your life where you can achieve your goals and create a life of fulfillment won't always be easy, but it is possible. It won't always be easy, but it is possible. So take action today. Start building the habits that will help you achieve excellence in your own life. I want you to remember this. Excellence is not a destination. It is a journey that requires commitment, dedication, and the power of good habits. The power of good habits. By making excellence a habit in your life, you will be able to achieve your goals. You'll be able to reach new heights of success. You'll be able to create a life of fulfillment and purpose. And for those who desire, you'll be able to live a more godly life. Why? Because if I practice living godly, then over time, I begin to do it automatically. And so it doesn't give the enemy the opportunity to come into my life, and I don't end up living like Paul described in Romans chapter 8 when he says, for the things that I would not to do, those are the things that I end up doing. But the things that I would to do, those are the things that escape me. What he was describing is I've got to learn to do the right habits so that those things become automatic, so that I squeeze the enemy out of my life and I make more room for Holy Spirit. Okay? And so by making excellence a habit in your life, you can create this life of purpose and fulfillment. So let's commit to building the habits that we need in order to live a life of excellence, one step at a time. Okay? One step at a time. Because I love what Kim said. How I practice is how I show up. How I practice is how I show up. I know people, what people want to do is people want to hear word. And they want the hearing of that word to totally change everything. But the hearing of the word doesn't change everything. What it does is give you the tools to change everything. But you're going to have to practice. It's why people come to church and they're frustrated because they're like, well, I want to live godly, but you don't practice it. I want to live holy, but you don't practice it. I want to get along with my spouse, but you don't practice it. I want to learn how to budget money better, but you don't practice it. Because see, in order to practice something, you've got to begin to have some discipline around it, and you got to develop a habit. And remember, you develop a habit through the habit formation process, which is cue, routine, and reward. And if you will practice that, whatever area in your life you're wanting to get good at, you'll see yourself getting better and better. Or as we say at our church, gooder and gooder. You'll see yourself getting gooder and gooder, okay? Speaking of getting gooder and gooder, let me give you a plug. I'm not going to say a shameless plug, but let me give you a plug. Tonight at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, Pastor Sean and I will be doing our 4th episode of Relationships 101. And I don't care who you are, you should be there tonight. Why? Because we are talking about mastering the art of apologizing. Oh, Lord Jesus. Listen, whether you've ever apologized or not, there's been a time you should have. There's been a time you needed to. And so we're going to real systematically, and it ain't going to take us all night, but we're going to walk through the elements of an effective apology. And when I say that, I don't mean that you can have a couple of them. I mean, we're going to talk through about how if you don't have these particular key elements we're discussing tonight, what you did was not an apology. And then we're going to talk about how you can be wise enough to know the people you interact with, to know how they best receive an apology. Because it's a two-pronged system. It's not just that you know how to make an apology, you know the proper way to give that apology to the person you're in relationship with. And that's whether you're in a romantic relationship, a family relationship, whether it's just a friendship, whether it is a relationship in some social environment, at church, at the country club, whatever it is, we're going to teach you how to master the art of apologizing. And I already heard the Lord say this, that there's going to be some healing and restoration take place, because there are going to be some relationships mended, because people are going to be able to go back and apologize in such a way that's going to be the bridge builder for restoring some relationships. Okay. So I appreciate all of you. I'm right at 59 minutes. That's including the intro and everything. So I appreciate you guys being here. We appreciate you taking your lunch break to be with me. Listen, share this if you haven't shared it. Maybe somebody will hear it. It'll spark something inside of them. Maybe they'll see this today and they'll join us for Relationships 101. If you are coming to Relationships 101, the only way to view it is by going to the Edwin and Sean Strickland Facebook page. How do I get there? It's on your screen. You can type in www.facebook.com, which is for everybody, and then just /Camp Strick. If you go there and like that page, that is the page where we will be broadcasting from tonight. It won't be on Sean's personal page. It won't be on her business page. It won't be on my personal page. It won't be on the church's pages. So if you want to come to Relationship 101, and we start promptly at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, you'll need to make sure you know how to get there. So all you got to do is go like the page, hit the notification that turns on the thing that says when we go live. And when we go live at 7 p.m., it'll pop up in your news feed and you can join us. Okay. Listen, God bless you all for being here. I appreciate it. Looking forward to Relationships 101. Looking forward to seeing you guys again on next week. Again, I'm your boy, Pastor Strick, and this has been episode 5 of EdTalk, Making Excellence a Habit. You guys have a great day and be blessed.